think we'll go ahead, Mary Paul, and get started, Mary, because it's a couple of minutes after 4. We have
Okay, I'll let you introduce me and then I'll take it away.
perfect. So welcome to our guests. We have Edward and Judy. Bruce, Denise, and Janet have joined us. My name is Nicole Pretry. I'm the Vice President of Development for Cedar Community, and also with me is Carrie Stern. She is the Marketing Manager here for Cedar Community. And we are very pleased today to introduce to you Mary Paul. Mary has actually done this presentation with us before, and it was very well received, and we thought it would be a great opportunity to bring it back. Mary actually retired from Harley Davidson 5 years ago. While she was at Harley, Mary worked as a leadership coach and a team effectiveness coach. Prior to retirement, Mary noticed that she was extremely anxious about retirement, not so much about finances, but how she was going to get along with the emotional aspects of such a change in her life. That prompted Mary to dig into research and to write a book about the emotional aspects of retirement back in 2016. Mary lives in West Bend with her husband and her constant companion, a 120-pound, very small, not lab named Doodle. And also a cat we hear that might open the door, just so you all know. She has a cat that might open the door behind her and make an appearance. So you are all muted. If you have questions.
And of course, when you...
Oh, I'm sorry, just to say, if you do have questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box, and we will make sure that we get the questions to Mary. So I will stop talking now, and Mary, you go.
All right, thank you. And I do want to thank everybody for coming in from a wonderful and beautiful day that we've had today. I mean, I was outside earlier this afternoon and getting some things ready for winter, which is fast approaching, I'm sure, but we won't have many of these days left. So I really do appreciate your time that you're willing to spend an hour or so with me and talk about retirement. And as Nicole and Carrie both said, I've been retired for 5 years and I'm still discovering new things about retirement. I think it continues to be a lifelong journey. So let me get started here and see how, let's see, where am I going? Now, there we go. So I found this quote probably about 3 years ago, because I also do this presentation for UW Wisconsin. I do it at Waukesha, and I also do it at West Bend. And I've done it a few other places as well. But I found this quote, which I think perfectly sums up something that you may be experiencing, even though you've been retired for a few years. You know, people can go through hell when they retire and they will never say a word about it, often because they're embarrassed. Because our cultural norm for retirement is that you're living the good life. And perhaps you saw my article in the Cedar Community magazine, that was entitled "Every Day is Friday for You," which is what my former boss, who's still working, by the way, that's what she said to me. And that her quote really stuck with me too. So for those of you who of course have family and friends that are still working, my guess is they look at you as a retiree and say, what do you have to worry about? You don't have to worry about getting up and commuting. You don't have the stress of work, every day, like Julie said, every day is Friday for you. And, they don't, we didn't understand when we were working either. And they don't understand. But what I found in my research is that as retirees, we don't talk about the emotional aspects of retirement. We don't talk about the times, when you may get lonely or when you may not know, what your purpose is, or when you get bored. I mean, we really don't talk about those things. We might say something to somebody, kind of whisper in their ear, but we really don't talk about it because, again, retirement is supposed to be the golden years when life is, life is wonderful. This is what we've all worked all those years for. but I'd like to start with a few retirement statistics just before I get into some of the other things. And I always update these every year, but the top ones remain pretty constant. In a poll from American Demographics, 41% of those respondents rated retirement as one of their top 5 major life events. Top 5. Now, every study I went to, Transamerica study, the US Department of Labor Statistics, everyone had retirement in the top 10 life changes. But I thought it was important to just note that this one study even had it within the top 5. And when we're talking about major life events, we're talking about things like marriage, birth of a child, even, a serious illness, even death of a loved one. I mean, serious life events. And if you think for a moment, if you worked for years, whether part-time or full-time, and you left that behind, I mean, that truly was one of your major life events. The next bullet point is 66% of retirees indicate that Social Security will be their primary source of income over the course of their retirement. I just thought that was interesting. I never had really known how many people depend on Social Security as their primary source, but 66%. However, fewer than half the retirees, so 46%, which would kind of be the other side of the 66%, agree that they've built a nest egg. They have a nest egg that's large enough for retirement. But only 16% of those people strongly agree, and 30% of them somewhat agree that they've got, a good retirement nest egg. So we've kind of got a little more than half that are going to depend on Social Security, and a little less than half that have a nest egg, of course, plus their Social Security. And then in a 2019 Transamerica survey, which is a great survey, these people go into a lot of depth in retirement. Only 12% of women are confident that they will be able to fully retire with a comfortable lifestyle. So women still, catching up. I've got just another slide with some statistics on it. When I originally wrote the book, and then I did do some re-editing, and when I originally started presenting this, 5 years ago, I guess it was, my audiences at that time were women. So I wanted to keep this slide in because there's still quite a few women. We've got Denise, and we've got Judy, and we've got, Nicole's there. And Edward and Bruce, this is interesting for you as well, because we usually lump retirees into kind of, one group, we're all retirees. Well, there are a few differences for women. If you think about, for ladies, if you think about your life, women often had to work flexibly and experience breaks in employment. We had babies, we got married. We moved with our husbands, those type of things, which also would lead to diverse work histories. My ex-husband was military, so needless to say, I moved a lot, and somebody had to go. He went on to his assignments, and I usually would go with him. Women also tend to be more influenced by family responsibilities. My gosh, you've got the, elder care, you've got some people take care of their grandchildren, other family members that might be ill, so be influenced by family responsibilities. Women, we still earn less than men, 81 cents to every dollar. But I got to tell you, last year when I did the presentation, it was 80.5 cents to every dollar. So girls, we're making headway at a half a cent a year. So 81 cents to every dollar. Women also tend to live in retirement for a longer period of time. And the thing The thing about women is we also recognize the importance of reaching out to others and establishing and maintaining contact. So more about community. Women will often, seek out friendships in retirement more so than men. Doesn't mean every man, that's just a statistic. And then, but the other thing is women are also more likely to still guess about how much to save for retirement, which, is kind of surprising. Think about it, coming up on 2021, and, we still have some people that are guessing, women in particular, about what to save for retirement. I'm going to go on to this, though. Life happens as we are making other plans. Or in this case, with 2020, COVID-19 happened while we were making other plans. So I did a little more research to find out about the effect of COVID-19 on retirement, because I thought, my gosh, I know that some people have thought about postponing retirement, but what about for us who are already retired? Because now we have an overlay of a serious pandemic that can certainly impact those in retirement. Now, this is a new study. This came out of the University of Maryland. It's down at the bottom, Nancy K. Schlossberg. And in her study, she found that retirees may be more resilient in this economic downturn than employed workers, because we have access to Social Security and access to Medicare, and many of us don't have a job to lose. And I know that I've talked about that with some of my friends who are retired as well, and said, there's not, I'm still getting my check every month. I have a small pension. I still get my small pension check every month. I still get my Social Security. I've got Medicare. I know that there's income coming in. So for many retirees, Dr. Schlossberg's study, sorry, I got to just open it. The phone rings like crazy. Talked about that 84% roughly is what she estimated that of retirees are still enjoying life, but not everybody. Of course, there are some that are struggling, and her estimate was around 20%. And of course, those who feel isolated. And I've got some questions coming up on the next slide about how this has affected you, or those, of course, who have trouble making ends meet. So some people have, minimum Social Security, and they depended upon a job, either full-time or part-time, or, depending upon their family circumstances in order to make ends meet. And also the pandemic has brought some additional stress to people who are already often feel anxious and depressed. So it hasn't let everybody, it definitely has had an effect on many people. But again, she talked about how we as retirees could be a little more resilient than others. So here's some of my questions to ponder. And this is where I'll ask you to use if you choose, I would ask you to respond on the Q&A box to one or more of these questions, and then the ladies will, read them back to me. And it's really, there's no right answer. These are just kind of just to share some of your thoughts with the others who are on the Zoom meeting. I'm curious to how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected your retirement plans or your daily retirement life. How has it affected your life? Another thing you may want to respond to is, what do you miss most about pre-pandemic life? I just heard my husband this morning say, he really misses seeing the grandkids. We live away from people, so we have to actually travel. But he's like, I miss seeing them. I mean, me too. I'm curious too about what kind of adjustments might you have had to make in order to keep disruption at a minimum. And do you have any advice or suggestions that you found for other retirees, that have helped you through this last 8 months, or perhaps somebody who's thinking about retiring. But I don't think we have anybody on the call that's thinking about retiring at this point. I think we're all retired. But what have you found that has helped you be able to cope through the pandemic? And I'll give you a few moments to, share your thoughts in the Q&A box, and then we'll see what you have to say. And ladies, you can let me know when the stuff comes in.
Will do.
I know I rediscovered jigsaw puzzles. I have 4 new ones waiting in the closet for me for this to start when it really gets cold, to help pass some of the time in the evening.
I downsized a lot.
Cleaning?
Yes, cleaning and
Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, I'm sure everybody, I've heard a lot of people who have cleaned out closets, downsized, been very active on things like Facebook, Zoom meetings with your family. Personally, I miss my grandkids. I miss seeing my own kids. But like I said, they live away, so we can drive, but we have to go. And my husband is not well. If he caught that stuff, he'd be dead in 2 weeks. I mean, he's had pneumonia 3 times. He was in the hospital actually in April, right at the height of all this, for 3 weeks. So that was kind of scary. But I miss lunch with my friends. I miss lunch. I miss chatting in person. Anything come in or no?
no, we have nothing else coming in. So if you want to go ahead and
Nothing out there.
Edward just joined us, and Janet. Janet says that she does miss getting together with friends in person, similar to what you said. Edward said he's enjoying photography and day trips, but they do definitely miss their grandchildren who also live out of state.
Okay. Oh, photography. All right. And day trips. Okay. All right. So again, that's something that we can do. You can still get out of the house, the 2 of you, or even go by yourself. I mean, if you're a single person. All right. So it sounds like we've all had to make these adjustments. So thank you. That was very helpful.
And Bruce actually also added.
So when I put this together.
We got one more. I just want to add, Bruce did share as well. We use Apple FaceTime to visit online with their son and their grandkids in Germany. So they, like we were talking before we started, have adapted to life with technology.
Yes. Okay. Apple FaceTime. I haven't tried that one yet. Might have to look into that for my kids in St. Louis. So yes, we have had to adapt to technology. And it's fine, but it's, I have 2 sets of grandkids. I've got little ones and then ones that are teenagers. And I miss the hugs from the little ones. The teenage boys are sort of like, yeah, hey grandma. So yeah, there's not much hugging from them. Yeah, but the hugs from the little ones I miss.
Right.
So I agree.
Denise also added.
All right, let me continue on about this.
Oh, we got one more. Yeah, we have one more we can share.
Go ahead.
Denise shared with us that she's been taking a few Zoom classes to connect with people, but she does miss being social with folks at the Y, her friends from the YMCA, and she also has been doing a lot of reading during this time. So.
Yes. Okay. And the library, well, the library is open, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I think the library's open. Yeah, library's open. Now I have a whole stack of books. I mean, personally, I have a whole stack of books to survive for the winter. So I don't read much in the summer, but yeah. And then I will head back to the library. I certainly hope they remain open. Some of you, it says, why is the retirement transition stressful for some? Well, not everyone experiences anxiety in retirement. And maybe some of you that are sitting here are saying, well, I'm not anxious about it. But of course, the pandemic has added to everybody's anxiety. But some of us are more anxious about retirement, especially, within those first, that first year or two, a little more anxious about, what we're going to do with the rest of our lives than others. So, like I said, I'll tell you my story, of experiencing, and this is non-financial anxiety in my transition to retirement. Now, that doesn't mean, that I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about buying a house in Tuscany or something. No, my husband was an over-the-road trucker, so he was self-employed, so he does not have a pension. I did get a small pension from Harley, which was wonderful, in addition to our Social Security. So we have enough. My thing, for me personally, as long as I can go to the grocery and buy what I want, then, I'm pretty happy. That's fairly simple. But what I found about retirement and what really prompted me to write the book was it's not as easy as it sounds. And maybe you all will remember when you were getting ready to retire, the last days of work, maybe these first 6 to 12 months of retirement, first thing was the countdown. And I remember I started about at least maybe 3 or 4 months out. I knew exactly how many days of work I had left. And if you laugh, think about maybe yourself, you'd had the same thing. Or there was somebody not too long ago, I think this was before when we could still see each other, that was getting ready to retire. And I did not know them, but I just, kind of very well, but I kind of leaned over and said, so how long you got? And he, I got 32 days and 15 hours. I mean, this guy even knew the hours. So there's, we all count down to that magic day. And perhaps you remember, as you think back, those first couple of months after you retired was kind of like a long vacation. It's like, depending upon when you retired, if you retired in the winter like I did, when it was snowy and cold, I thought, oh, I don't have to get in the car and I don't have to drive to Milwaukee in the snow. Or in the summer, you can go out and take a walk on a beautiful day like today. It's kind of like a long vacation. But when I really realized that I was having trouble with retirement was this next bullet point that says, you are not the boss of me. So when I retired, and I retired in February, and I cleaned the house and all, in February and March and April. But then when it got warm, I started to go fix stuff outside. And perhaps some of you did things similarly. I fixed things that hadn't been fixed in years. I glued every little piece of something that had been broken off and was in the junk drawer. I went through all that. I glued all that stuff together. I remember I fixed a fountain. I remember I fixed, I completely took the grill apart, put it all back together. I was just this whirling dervish of activity. And I remember one morning, my husband, who is also retired, was sitting in the house watching TV about 10:30 or so in the morning. It was a gorgeous day like today. And I bounced in through the back door and I'm like, I did this and I did this and I did this. And then I fixed this and I put this together. And then, when you're ready, we can go do this. And then I'd also like to fix this, but I need your help in this. And he just looked at me with this deadpan look and said, you are not the boss of me. He said, I don't work for you. You're not my boss. And went back to watching television. And I was like, oh. I realized that I had just taken my retirement, my new retirement, and just kind of turned it into a list of projects around the house. That was really, I just turned it into another job. I had a spreadsheet, 3 pages long, of all the things I wanted to do around the house. And I was clicking them off day by day. And I realized at that point that that's what I did. I just turned it into a new job. So I kind of sat back. That kind of really took me back when he said that. And I kind of, it didn't stop me completely, but I did slow down. The other thing that I realized that I never thought that I would have to do in retirement was I had to make new friends. My family lives away. Most of my friends, I think with the exception of 2, were all through work. And most of them live in Milwaukee because that's where I worked. And I realized I didn't know people in West Bend. I came home and slept in West Bend at night and did my shopping, at Pick and Save and Menards, but I didn't have friends here. And I never thought at the age of 65, I would have to go out and meet people and make new friends. Or perhaps if you've moved, or you've moved back to Wisconsin, or you've moved into the Cedar community even or something, and all of a sudden you're making new friends. And, that's a distressing, and it's anxious, it can cause anxiety. So that was something I never thought I would have to do. And I've talked to several other people who have done the same thing. They've moved, or they've, realized their friends were through work and they had to make new friends. And it's hard. The other thing was, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with myself? So I started to discover some of the things I once did that I really liked. And I went way back into my 20s. When I was in my 20s, I loved to garden and loved to cook. And of course, when you're working, a lot of times you don't garden, and what you cook tends to be out of the freezer or the box, out of a box. So I went back to some of the activities. So I think it was, now I may have the names wrong, so you have to forgive me, but maybe it was Bruce who had, it might have been Bruce or Edward, but somebody who enjoyed photography. And maybe that was something you did when you were younger, or it might have been a brand new hobby. But so thinking about things that you really enjoy. And then finally, if some of you who have this experience, I think it was Denise who said she tried a part-time job. So I call it feeding the beast. I was off work for about a year, and one of my former colleagues called me and asked me if I'd like to come in just for an afternoon and do a little team building session with their group, a few exercises, so, that's what I did, was team building. And I was absolutely crazy. I was like, yes, I'll do it right away. What do you need? I was so excited. She didn't even want me to come in for 3 or 4 months, but I had it all done in 2 days. I was ready to come in. She's like, slow down, Mary, just slow down. So, I could see that at that point, how important work was to me. Some people, it's not that important, but for me, work really kind of fed my soul. So, learning these type of things was my story, prompted me to write the little book. And it's like, now what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I was looking everywhere outside. And as retirees, or soon to be retirees, we tend to look outside of ourselves for our happiness. So we search for what we believe will make us happy, with our time we have left. Money, family, social activities, travel, hobbies. And within the last 5 years, I've realized it's not outside that I really should have been searching for. I should have started with inside and really look inside myself for happiness. what was it that I really wanted rather than to get involved with activities or doing. I once had a dear friend, she lives in Boston and I don't get to see her anymore, but she would always say, we need to get around about the business of being human beings instead of human doings. And so I was definitely, in your work life, often you're the human doing. And now in retirement, you do have time to be the human being. So there is an emotional as well as an intellectual journey into retirement. And there is a gap in there called the void. And I absolutely love this graph because you think about retirement and we use our intellect. We think about our activities, our hobbies, the family, how all these things that we should be doing. And we focus on, again, those activities, the things that the doing pieces of retirement. But our emotions are up and down. So those gaps in between are really the void. Not every day, as my old boss says, is Friday for you. There's some days, I remember some days, if you come winter time, we're looking in February and it's cold and gray and it hasn't gotten above 15 degrees for 3 or 4 days. You're kind of really stuck, inside, and you think you're busy, but you'd like to have something new to do, or something. I mean, you can get kind of low, or you haven't seen friends in a long time and Zoom is a wonderful thing, or the Apple iPhone piece, but the meeting. I mean, it's wonderful, but you can get kind of low. So again, that emotional journey, we always, intellectual pretty well goes in one direction, straight up towards success or happiness, but the emotions are up and down. So how do we deal with the void? So I got a couple of quick questions for you. You can think about these. The void's a great opportunity for us to recognize our personal needs, our inside, what we need inside. And I want you to think about the following questions. So how do you personally respond to uncertainty in your life? We have uncertain times now. You've had them before the pandemic started. But I mean, how do you as an individual, how do you respond to uncertainty in your life? And what are examples of how I have reacted to the unknown? There's still many unknowns ahead of us. So thinking about what your reactions are. What are some of the most important elements that you need or want for a meaningful future? Again, I'm thinking about being introspective, going inside. What's really important to you? Family, spiritual, community. Is work still part of your life? Your hobbies? I mean, what is really important to you? What are those elements that you really need in order to be a happy, successful, and fulfilled retiree? And what additional information do I need in order to be uncomfortable with this void? And when I'm talking about additional information, is there something, again, looking at the elements of what you really want to have for a meaningful future? How do you respond to uncertainty? Maybe you yourself want to do a little research or read a couple of books or so on, just dealing with transitions in order to get into that, how to get it, telemarketing. So how do you deal with the void? So, and who or what can help me in letting go and moving forward? So I'm going to give you a minute or two to just kind of think about those. And, and if there's anything that you want to put in the chat box, please do. And ladies, you'll have to let me know if anybody's typing. Are you still there? Hello?
We are still here. Those are some tough questions, Mary.
I have to tell you, okay, so I'm just gonna like take off the mask. This is killing me. I have to tell you, I mean, it really is. I am such an extrovert. I am such a people person, and I'm staring at this screen and this little camera, and I so want to be able to see people's faces. I've been a presenter all my life. I have always built my presentations off of the reaction of an audience, and I've presented to small groups and well into like 1,000 people or so. And so for me to just be able to look at the screen is killing me. It's a learning opportunity.
That's right.
Anything in the chat box?
No, we have nothing. So.
All right, then I'm moving on.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Okay.
You get one. Thank you, Bruce. Bruce shared with us that he fills in
bye, Bruce.
He fills in the void with golf, church, and walks.
All three of those sound very healthy, Bruce. Okay, golf, but see, so again, thinking about what kind of fills your need, fills the void, golf, church, and walks. Excellent. Thank you, Bruce, for satisfying my need. So those of you, so as a working professional, and I mean, you can have any career. It doesn't matter. When I say working professional, you could have been a teacher, you could have been a nurse, you could have been a truck driver. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, whatever we did when we were working professional. But for some of us, work provided us with the following things, and some it was a little bit more than others. If we think about your working life, and who was it? Was it, I can't remember if it was Denise or somebody who had just been retired a year. Is that Denise?
Janet.
No, she'd been retired 2 years.
Janet shared.
See, I can't ask you because you're out there.
Yep.
Who was that?
Janet had shared that she's been retired about a year.
Janet. So yeah, Janet's been retired a year.
Yep, she tried a part-time job.
So Janet, you're a newbie. Yeah, Janet's still a newbie. But think back about what work did for some of us. It provided structure in our life. I can't do that. I got to get up and go to work. Well, I got to do this. I have to work. So we structured our life around work. It provided a sense of pride. Regardless of where you worked, you were proud, proud to be a really good employee, proud to work there. Status, maybe you had some status associated with your job or who you worked for or what you did. Provided you a challenge. Almost every job's a challenge, and so, provided you with challenge. It had social context. The people that you worked with, probably you became friends with many of them. Accomplishment kind of related to the challenge. When you reached goals, you accomplished a difficult task, you got a project done on time, job well done. Again, sense of accomplishment. And all of those things can lead to self-worth. For some of us, and I know this was definitely for me, but for some of us, our self-worth got caught up in our job. And I was one of those, people who my self-worth really was more associated with my job than me as just a human being. And so we're the ones who tend to have, more difficult time adjusting into retirement because we place so much importance on our work life. It's a difficult transition. So consider your meaning of work. What did work really mean to you? Did it really structure your life? Were most of your friends, your social network, was at work? Did it help you feel that you were contributing to society? Did it define the way you felt about yourself? And did it also shape your sense of your place in the community? And like I said, for me, I was definitely, I guess I was one of those, I really got into the job scene in the early, what was it? Probably the 80s, the 90s, those were probably the big 20 years of my career. And, I was one of those, and I was all about work. Sometimes to my kids' dismay, I was all about work. I'll be interested if there's anything coming up in the chat box. I'll give you a couple of minutes and then we'll go on. I can hear my husband snoring in the other room. He's taking a nap, obviously riveted by my presentation. He's heard it before.
Janet just shared with us that she agrees very much with all of these points.
Well, Janet, if we could, we'd have lunch. And we talk about it. Might have some helpful tips for you, Janet. Anything else?
Janet said that her job ended before she was ready for it to end.
Oh, yes. I have had several people when again, like at UW, when I was able to do these in person, I've had several people who've been in that situation. And they said, I got let out, and I wasn't ready. So there was definitely, Janet, definitely there's a hole there that's not been fulfilled because you weren't ready, and again, that was part of the reason, for the talks. And, like I said, I wish we could be together personally. This is like second best, but, you are not alone. There are many others like you who may have been let out early, or again, work was so important to them and they, were just, they had to go because of age or health or something. And, something that was out of their own control, and we don't talk about it because remember, you're living the good life now, but it's okay. I know there was one presentation, and this was probably a couple of years ago. I was at Waukesha, and this lovely woman, she was like there was only maybe 10 or 12 people, but this lovely woman sitting there, and she's, she just all of a sudden just burst into tears. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And she said, I'm so sorry, for breaking down. But she said, I thought I was the only one. I thought everybody else was, completely happy in retirement. And that, they were happy they were retired. I was the only one that was having trouble. And it's like, no, there's a lot of us that have trouble and anxiety. So thank you, Janet, for sharing that.
Edward also shared.
I'll go on now, if it's all right, ladies.
Oh, yeah. Edward also shared with us that he worked 6 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day. So work was his whole life before he retired.
Ooh. Yeah, boy, you must have had one heck of a job. Yeah, so think about Edward. Your work was your life. Talk about structure your life. Wow. And again, I'm guessing from that content that there was I'm guessing from that comment for you, Edward, that there was definitely an adjustment period for you. I don't know how long it took, but I'm thinking there was quite a bit of adjustment period after you kind of got through that honeymoon phase. Okay. I'll move on. This is Edward. Only it would have been 10 or 12 hours a day. But I mean, think about when we were working. Same thing for Janet, same thing for me, some of the rest of you too, with Bruce and Denise. This is what we did. And then all of a sudden it went to that. What am I going to do today? Funny story again, my boss who, she's a lovely, lovely one. And she has one of those jobs now, kind of like Edward had, where it's 10 or 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And the last time I saw her, she just looked at me and said, all I do is work. And I'm like, oh, sorry. But she told me, she begged me when I retired, she said, please don't end up like my mother. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, my mother can make going to the doctor a whole day affair. And I was like, oh, no, that won't happen to me. Because, when we were working, you'd go to work, and then if after work or before work, depending upon your schedule, that's when you did your grocery shopping. You went to the dry cleaners. You picked up stuff from, other places you had to go. You went to the doctor. You went to the dentist. You did all that stuff, and work. You did all that stuff. And now that I've been retired for 5 years, yeah. Well, tomorrow I have to drop my car off to be serviced and go to the doctor. I actually am a little anxious about that because I got to get up early. I got to take a shower. I got to get dressed. I got to get down to Milwaukee. This is going to be all day. So yes, I became her mother. I can make almost all day out of going to the doctor. So, I don't know what happens. And perhaps some of you have said to yourself, how did I ever work? How did you ever work and still get stuff done around the house and, and get your errands done? And how do we ever work? And we all did it. It's amazing. I don't know what happens. So definitely this is, adjustment time. Another thing, maybe, for some of you, and perhaps, listening, thinking about we may suffer from an achievement addiction. This is an actual, they talk about achievement addictions. And this is from an author of a cute little book called The Retiring Mind. We miss the action of professional life. We miss the opportunities, the activities. We miss the satisfaction and the recognition of a job well done. Whether it came from somebody else or was intrinsic upon yourself, you even miss the stress of work, which I never thought that could even be possible. But I do. You kind of miss the I gotta get this done. Like I said, I'm creating my own stress now for tomorrow because I gotta be in Milwaukee at 9. At 9, and I'm stressed. I have to leave at 8. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. But yet we like having some of that stress. There's no activity other than work where there is such a high return for one's abilities and accomplishments. Now, that may be just the way we've been programmed, but that's the way that a lot of us think. And that's a generalization, but it's the way a lot of us think. And achievement can be addicting. So how do you how do you go inside, find what's important to you, and how do you find how you can meet those achievement needs? So I'm curious, is anybody out there, especially kind of last one, I kind of missed that stress of work, kind of missed that, that stress. I'm not saying really, really bad stress, but I'm like, kind of miss the stress of work besides me. And I've been retired 5 years. I'll give you a minute to chat it, to put anything in that chat box.
Edward had shared with us after the last screen as well that it only took him about 5 minutes to not miss work. It's 10 to 12-hour days.
All right, Edward. You're making me laugh. Okay, so you didn't miss work. All right, so that's kind of, I'm curious. Were you angry? Gosh, I wish I was there. Wish I could see him in person. I'd love to know if he has any kind of anxiousness about retirement or not. But was Edward the photography guy, or was that Bruce? I forget. Can't keep track of everybody.
Did say that he was enjoying photography earlier. So, and Bruce just shared with us that
All
deadlines
right.
are good. He likes deadlines.
And I would be curious, if Bruce is still creating his own deadlines. You can make them up yourself. I'm curious if he would respond if I'm asking Bruce, are you still making your own deadlines?
He says yes.
And why wouldn't Bruce do that? Because then it's like, there, did it, got it done, got it all done. Yeah, so we substitute for some of the things that, Bruce really enjoyed those deadlines. So he's substituting, it might be, it's a deadline probably with far less consequences, but still creating the deadlines. That's good. Thank you, Bruce. And thank you, Edward.
Janet,
There are, okay, so this,
I was going to say, Janet also shared with us.
We'll go back to something that's.
Janet shared with us that she misses the action and the satisfaction of work.
All right, Janet. Yeah, see, it's just that, again, those are those outside pieces that now we have to go inside and look for. They're in there, but we have to dig them out of ourselves. We used to get them externally. There are 6 retirement phases. I'll just kind of read through them again, because all of us are retired, but I mean, pre-retirement, the planning time, think about back when you were getting ready, how you can save for it, what you were going to do. You had all that, all your planning, your plans. Then the big day came, for somebody, I think it was, what was that? For somebody who got let out early, it wasn't so much smiles and handshakes as it was kind of a farewell. But, for some of us, we knew the countdown. We knew there was, if it was our own doing, we knew when we would be leaving. Then there's the honeymoon phase. That seems to last for different periods, depending upon who you are. For some, it's longer. For some, it's shorter. Again, it's, feel like they're on a big vacation. They're off visiting relatives. Of course, not now if you just retired, but, the hobbies, things, it's kind of that I feel free. I'm free. Then comes disenchantment. And that old song, now some of you are, since you're retired, you're probably close to my age. There was an old song from Peggy Lee. And I remember I was little when she used to sing that song about, is that all there is? And I can't remember, is that all there is? And that's all I remember. I remember Peggy Lee singing that song. And it was such a sad song. And, then it's like, this is it? This is retirement? Might have had other, this is not quite what I expected. So the emotional high of the honeymoon is worn off, and now it's time to get down to the business of being a retiree. So that's when you get into, and maybe this is kind of especially where, like where Denise or maybe Janet, might be, is like reorientation. It's actually building your new identity. And it's the most difficult stage in the whole retirement process. It takes both time and conscious effort. Who am I now? What's my purpose? I got a little booklet that I might have you, I'll make sure that it's in the resources, but it's been very helpful to me. Again, this is where you go inside. What's my new identity? And again, this, takes some thought time. Today would have been a wonderful day, or this week, go take your walk, maybe go out and take some beautiful fall pictures and think about, what is it? What's my new identity as a retiree? And then finally, you kind of get into a routine about moving on. Your new identity's been created, and that landscape becomes familiar territory. and you kind of enjoy, you can enjoy this new phase in life with a new sense of purpose. I have been retired 5 years. I am still somewhere between step 5 and 6. Even in 5 years, I'm still, finishing some parts of identity and trying to get it into a routine. I'm so it for me, that's my timeline. Other people may go through it quicker. Edward, he might have gone through it really quick. So, some of us take longer. But, kind of think about these 6 phases and where you currently are. Again, the beauty of retirement gives us time to be introspective, go inside. For some of us, we have much more time now, thanks to the pandemic, to go inside and think about things. But think about your spirit, your emotions, kind of your dreams, your intuition, think about that. If you're not familiar with this is actually out of the book that my friend Cedar wrote, and the book that I'll show you in a minute. And it's the Wheel of Life exercise. It's been around forever, and it's public domain. If you looked up, the Wheel of Life, you'd find on the internet, you'd find a whole bunch of this stuff. But it's a really helpful exercise. Just draw a wheel and insert your important areas in your life, whatever they are. These are just some suggestions, social life, finance, personal growth, your health, family, maybe it's spiritual for you, but what are your hobbies? I mean, draw your pie or your wheel here, and then assign a satisfaction number from 1 to 10. Where, areas where you are really fully fulfilled and satisfied might be a 9 or a 10. And areas that need some work, definitely a lower number. And then look at the 2 lowest scores. This is not my wheel. I just, copied this off the internet. But, for this particular individual, for family and finances are their lowest 2. And then to really sit back. It's a way to really kind of organize your thoughts. Okay, so these are my 2 areas that I want to focus on. And think about kind of, what can I do to grow those areas that are important to me in my life? What can I, and, keep the wheel, put it on your refrigerator, or, stick it on your, stick it someplace where you'll see it often. And, come back and check every couple of months. How am I doing? If I said I'm going to spend more time on, personal growth or focus on my health, how am I doing on that? So it's really a good little exercise. And you can do this at any age, but it kind of helps get your thoughts organized. So I have done this. I've done this before, years ago, but, and my areas have changed, depending upon where you are in your life. But it's a good little exercise. And this is from my friend Tiza with her book, Your Journey of Transformation. Now, this was something just kind of interesting that I thought when I found this about a year or so ago. And so there are these of us people, who are people over 65 who have retired and ended up going back to work on a full or part-time basis, and money wasn't their primary incentive. So they call it unretirement now. And it's becoming more popular with 25 to 40% of retirees who have resumed working. Think about when you're out, when you are out, and where was I? I think I was at Pick and Save the other day, and, it was during the day, and, the high school kids, the kids have gone back to school, and there was a guy who was at least my age, maybe a little older, bagging groceries. And I'm thinking, was he one of these unretired guys who just said, I'll go to work at Pick and Save part-time? So again, 25 to 40% of retirees end up going back to work, maybe not necessarily for the money, but just to keep active, for social reasons, to kind of be out there, so they call it fluid. Retirement no longer comes at a certain age, or people are lengthening careers, and we're living longer, we're healthier, and there's more choice than ever before. So unretirement gives us a sense of purpose along with social interaction, in addition to a little income. I did the census this year. I was one of the census takers. I think we started at the end of July. And I'm still doing it, but Wisconsin is actually the second state in the nation that is the most complete. Minnesota's first, Wisconsin's second, which, actually is very good. So I don't get much work anymore, but the money was nice. I made enough to get some trees cut down in our yard, but it was kind of like, I've got a job, I've got something to do, I'm going to go out and interact with people. And that was a fairly pleasant experience. I've only had a couple of encounters that weren't scary, but I wasn't really that welcome. But otherwise than that, it was fun. It was something just fun to do, and now it will end at the end of October. So, maybe there is a little unretirement for you somewhere. Maybe it's a temporary job someplace. So, starting to kind of sum up here, but it's like, what are your passions? Finding your way through the void and taking stock of your desires. I want you to be patient with yourself. Takes a while, takes a while to get used to retirement. Evaluating your choices, and this pandemic stuff can't last forever. Hopefully when I come back, next year or so, that I'll be able to see you in person. And so I won't be a crazy woman then. I'll be able to see your faces. And in creating your new identity. This was one of the things that I kind of keep in the presentation, more so for people. A lot of times I'll have people who are getting ready to retire. And I said, and I would hand this out to them in a handout and, say, go get a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or something, sit down on your deck and fill this out. When I think of retirement, I think of what? And with each day that retirement draws closer, I get more what? For me, it was anxious. I very much want my retirement to be, fill in the blank. What I'm doing now to make my retirement great is other actions I could be taking to further my dream. Then obstacles to taking these actions include, and in looking back 5 years from now, I think I'll view my retirement years as what? So again, this will be, I think Carrie said she'd have somewhere where, some of this will be available to you. So if you know anybody who's getting ready to retire and is a little anxious about it, sometimes these questions might help. And then there's one other thing, though, since we've got the pandemic going on in retirement. It's about effective coping strategies. And effective coping strategies tend to fall into 3 categories. And this doesn't necessarily just mean the pandemic. This means, if you've got, again, some stress in your life, it's, around changing difficult situations, reframing those difficult situations that can't be changed. How can I reframe it? And relieving the stress of dealing with difficult situations. So there's kind of a few questions to ask yourself. Can I change it? Can I change what's going on? And a lot of this is out of your control. Can I change the way I see it? Because changing the way that you see something or reframing it, if you can actually change the way you see it, you might just be fooling yourself, so to speak, but it helps relieve the stress. It actually helps reduce the cortisol in your body, the stress hormones. And that helps, can I reduce my stress? And then something that's always been helpful for me is the good old serenity prayer. I know you have all familiar with this. And, there are probably many times in your life when you've recited this, and it's a good prayer to know, around grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It's just kind of just saying that. Sometimes I'll just say that out loud, and it actually kind of helps me relax. So again, if you are experiencing any anxiety around, thinking about, what you can do to reframe things and how you're currently experiencing that. So, hopefully, this short talk will be able to have helped you with some of that. And there's no better time than right now, get on your new journey, than this very moment. I want to thank you, for being here. There's a part of you that probably has a few questions, or you wouldn't be here in the first place attending the session. And so take some time to reflect and go inside about what you really want. And then, hey, as retirees, we can just go for it. So here's me, only with glasses now and shorter hair. But, retiree, building my routine, I'm a retiree. That took a while for me to just be able to say I'm a retiree, homemaker, grandmother, volunteer. I still do a little consulting. Caregiver, hobbyist. I'm happier, I'm feeling more peaceful. Actually, I think doing these presentations is therapeutic for me, maybe even more therapeutic for me than any of you. But, I'm still building the new me. And this is the resource list. And can we make this available to people somehow?
Yes, we can email this out to folks.
All right. So I'm going to give under the readings, I'm going to actually get out of the presentation here. I have a little book down at the bottom, which is the Working Women's Transition into Retirement. You can't find that anymore because I sold all the copies I had. I'm sold out over the past, since I wrote it. And now I have to buy 2,000 more. No, I'm not buying 2,000 more books. So my book is out of print. But anyway, there's Teesa's book here. So I'm going to get out of okay, now stop share. Will that get me back to full screen?
Yes.
Looking for, yes. Okay. So this is Teesa's book, and it's called Your Journey of Transformation. Teesa is a dear friend of mine and says a workbook for a new you. Teesa actually is 80. She's 80. She just finished this book in the spring. But it is a workbook. It is available on Amazon. And Teesa is a coach and a consultant. She's had many changes in her life. I mean, in reality, and one huge change. Her husband just passed away this spring, just as the book was coming out. But Teesa is, a strong woman. And she said, I'm taking this, even though my husband is gone, she said, I'm taking this as, I still have my life to live, and so, if you're looking for a workbook, and believe me, I have gone through a lot of retirement books, and probably 99% of them are on finances. Well, it takes a lot more than just money to make you happy in retirement. And so sometimes you need a little self-help book that is something else. Teesa's book's one of the best I found. That and the other one, I can't think of his name now, Brummett, I believe his name was, called The Retiring Mind. That was another, it's short, small. That was another good book on retirement. But Teesa's is a little workbook. So I want to give Teesa a plug here. And then I'll let Teesa know that I'm plugging her book. But that's what I have for today. And I certainly want to thank you all for coming on such a beautiful day. And if there's any other comments, I'd love to hear them. And if not, I'll, let Carrie and Nicole, I think it was, kind of finish us up. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Janet says, thank you for sharing. This is Nicole talking again. We will definitely get a screenshot or a PDF of those resources emailed out to all of our attendees today. And we can definitely do that. We will also have a recording of this session that we can post on our website on the events and seminars page. So we will definitely be able to post a replay of this. It will be on our YouTube channel that we have. So, but we'll have a link to that on our website. And normally this is the time too when we thank everybody for coming and also invite people if they're interested in a tour here at Cedar Community, but obviously that part is not going to be happening today. Um, we do have some exciting new Cedar Ridge homes coming online here. We actually have our first residents moving into our brand new beautiful duplex ranch homes. Our first residents are moving in next week. It is very exciting. So if anybody does have any questions or would like more information about those, they can certainly reach out to us and contact us. And we thank you so much, Mary, for joining us again. This is always this is the second time I've gotten to sit through this presentation, and I learned something new each time. So that was great. I'm still a few years away from retiring, but I feel like I'm going to be in better shape than some are, ready to retire when that time comes. So are there any other questions?
Well, thank you very much. I like doing it. Like I said, I had to confess, I broke down halfway through. You know,
Yeah.
I have to confess, I'd much rather be there in person with all of you, but thank you though for spending the time.
You bet. I don't see any other questions. Denise did share with us not only a thank you, but she said it sounds like she has a lot of company at stage 5. So
Okay.
That's a great comment.
Good, good. I'm glad. Well, I hope it was helpful. And thank you very much. And I guess we'll sign off now. Is that correct?
Yes. Thank you all for joining us today. And again, feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. Thank you, Mary.
Bye. Have a great evening.